Hey legends, in this video we're going to do some tips, tricks, hacks as you may for better recordings. Now you may know some of these, and if you do, I apologize, but they're really good tips to know for anyone who doesn't know them. And if you have some tips that I don't mention, drop them in the comments below. Let's put some really solid tips, tricks, and hacks in these comments. Okay, the first one I have for you is a 2-in-1. So you get 2 for the price of 1, and this one is the double pop filter. So here it is, the double pop filter. So some vocalists, you know, when they sing and they get on the mic really hard, the plosives sneak through, and some mics are really sensitive to plosives. I find like the Neumann TLM103, plosives seem to sneak through a single pop filter on that really easily. So if you're having that, just chuck another pop filter on and just put, you know, maybe a hand width or, you know, a couple of centimeters between and space it out. So the air is going to hit this one and then it's going to be stopped by this one, and hopefully no plosives are going to hit the capsule. But wait, there's more. Here's part 2 of this hack. So you've told them to stay about 5 to 10 centimeters back from the pop filter, but they've closed their eyes and they just keep drifting in until they're eating the pop filter. And they're singing up nice and close to the mic, and you're just getting a whole bunch of proximity effect then that you're gonna have to deal with later. So if they're doing that, the double pop filter trick works well because they can get as close to this one as they want, and you can keep them the correct distance from the mic. So if you're having trouble with staying the right distance from the mic, maybe just putting a second pop filter up will stop you sneaking in. I might have mentioned this before in a video, but having a DI before you track your bass and your guitar, so if you're running them into an amp, make sure you put a DI at the front of your chain. You always want to capture that clean signal so you can reamp the guitars in case the tone that you track through an amp or any of the tones that you've used for the pedals, they just don't sound good in the mix and you want to reamp it later, you have that option. As well as if you've been recording really distorted high gain guitars and you want to edit the timing of them, having the DI lets you see all the transients of the guitar as it's played, so that then you can cut and you can move both of those tracks at once, the distorted signal and the DI, and you can line it up on the grid and get everything nice and tight. Now, when you're tracking drums, if you like to muffle your drums a little bit, I'd highly recommend checking out something like the Snare Weight M80s. So check these little guys out. So all it is, it's just like a little piece of leather attached with a little clip that you can just clip over the rim of your drum, and it's got magnets so you can change the amount of padding that you put on. So very useful tool, you can chuck them on and off, very easy. It's much better than tape, you don't have to cut it up, put it on, take it off, it leaves residue on your drums. Highly recommend these. Now, if you don't want to spend money on these because they are kind of like, the price is a little jacked on them, what I used to do is I used to get something like a business card. Get one here. So I used to get a business card and I would either just use it as the whole thing and just put a bit of tape on it, and I tape that to the rim of the drum. So every time you hit the drum, the paper would bounce up and then it comes back down. It's almost like a little gate. It's actually really cool. So you hit it and then it comes back down and cuts off the ringing. So you could even just, you know, you could cut this in the shape of the rim, you could thin it out, but a little bit of cardboard, thin cardboard like that, with just some tape over the edge of your rim, works really well for muffling, and it just kind of, it's almost like that snare weight trick, just gates it a little bit and takes the ring out, but you still get the initial hit, the excitement, because it bounces up and then it comes back down and gates it. So pretty cool trick. All right, this next one is for the guitarist as well. If you are tracking guitars and you're getting a lot of noise in your take, a lot of string noise, you might be playing like a high lead part and these low strings are rumbling a little bit, you could just grab a sock, preferably a clean one, tie it around the end of your guitar, and then that is going to mute all the strings. And depending where you're playing, you might want to bring it up closer to where you are. And as you play, these strings won't be able to rumble and you'll be able to do your lead part and get a much cleaner sound. Of course, you can always just go out and buy one of these little things that you strap onto your guitar and it mutes the strings in the same way that the sock does, but the sock is free. So just depends if you want to buy something like this or if you want the free version. So this next one is for a bit of emergency use. If you're in a session and you've got a guitar or a bass that you're using and it's sounding a little out of tune, even though they've tuned it multiple times, so there's an intonation problem along the neck, what we're gonna need to do is try and tune the guitar to a note on the fretboard. So this works sometimes it doesn't, but it's definitely worth trying if you're in a pinch. So when we were tracking this bass part, everything sounded good except for the top string. The top string sounded really pitchy and sharp. So what we did was tune to the first note of the chorus, which was played on the 3rd or the 4th fret, and we made sure that that note was in tune. That meant that when we've had this open, it was actually a little bit flat, but there were no open notes being used, so it really didn't matter. So when we had that note in tune and then the rest of it sounded good, we could then track the song and didn't have any issues. But when we had all the open notes in tune, it sounded really terrible, and we could all hear it, and we're all kind of looking at each other like, who's gonna say it first? This sounds really out of tune. And so after a few takes, I kind of said, look, let's try this. It worked really well and it saved the day. So definitely worth trying. If you have a guitar that you need to use, you know, that's the tone. We like the tone, we want to use this guitar. That can really help save the day. And the same thing, like if you're doing a lead part higher up the neck and it's sounding out of tune, try and tune the notes to what you're playing up here and see if that sounds any better. It's not the ideal thing to do, but it can help. Go set your guitars up properly before you come and record. Okay, this is fairly well known, but it does catch some people out still. They'll come in, they'll tune their guitar up and they'll get ready to go, and then they pop a capo on. Now, as soon as you put the capo on, everything goes sharp. So you always need to put the capo on and then tune to the capo. So even if you want to tune the guitar first and then pop the capo on, just check it again, make sure all those notes are in tune. Otherwise you're gonna have a pitchy guitar take, and sometimes you won't hear it until it's too late. You'll decide, let's add some bass or some piano to this track, and you think, why does this sound out of tune? That's because you didn't tune to the capo, so always tune to the capo. So this next tip is for when you're tracking something that's quiet, and so you've got to turn your mics up, and you don't want to get click spill coming out of your headphones into the mic. And this is always tricky when you're doing something like acoustic guitar, or it's like finger picked, or even just strumming and there's some silence between gaps, and then the click comes out of your headphones. So you always have to have your headphones pretty quiet when you're tracking stuff like that, just to avoid those issues. But what can make it easier is using appropriate headphones for the situation. So for example, sound isolation style headphones. So I've had a whole bunch of these different types of sound isolation headphones, and they always break, and it really bothers me. But I have found that for the price, the Vic Firth headphones for drummers, so these are like a drumming style headphone, they actually sound quite nice, they're pretty comfortable, and they last for a decent amount of time, and they're actually the cheapest of the lot. So highly recommend these if you want to use them while you're tracking something like acoustic guitar or anything where you need to trap the click into the headphones. So they're very earmuff style, keeps everything locked in, and you can have them a little bit louder than your standard closed back headphones. So this is a little tip for mixing. If you're spending a lot of time mixing, I highly recommend that you mix with your monitors pretty quiet at just a general talking kind of volume. You don't want them too loud that they start fatiguing your ears and impairing your judgment, as well as just you can't mix for long when things are loud. So if you have them at a lower volume, it's a general kind of listening volume. It's generally the volume that most people listen to music at, to be honest. And then every now and then, crank them up, see what stands out, see what sounds harsh, see what needs to be reined in, and then bring them back down and keep going. As well as doing the opposite, just bringing everything right down really quiet and have a listen to what you can hear, what things are poking out of the mix at a low volume. This is a bit of a random one, but people always ask me like, why is there a paintbrush on your desk? So if you own rack gear or any kind of gear with lots of little knobs and stuff around on your desk or around in your studio, it's kind of hard to clean that stuff. So a little brush like this gets in between all the knobs, you can dust it out and make it look nice and clean for your clients so they don't think that you are a disgusting person with a dirty studio. As well as it's good to take care of your gear. Now here's another mixing tip. If you have been mixing a song all day or for hours on end and you get to the end and you're like, yes, this is it, this sounds sick, do not send it. Do not send it to the client. Do not hit send. Maybe just put it in like a work in progress folder on Dropbox or something, and then don't listen to it for a bit. Go and do something else and come back maybe the next day, have a listen. Are you still happy with it? If you are, hit send. But most of the time, some little things are gonna jump out at you, or maybe some major things that were just sort of bypassing your ears because you got so used to how it sounded. So it's always good to take that little bit of a break before you send off your material to clients. So this next tip is really important when you're tracking, especially if you're doing something like drums. Check your room for sounds that resonate. So if you have other instruments in the room, say you've got an acoustic guitar that's just kind of sitting on a stand near your drum kit, when you hit the drums, it's gonna sing. The strings are gonna rumble and you're gonna hear a resonance come from that open body on the guitar. Same thing with anything metallic in your room. Say you've got something like this, like I've got a stool here, and when you make a loud sound near it, I don't know if you can hear that, you can hear the resonance of the metal. So any stuff like that, you hit the drums, that's gonna resonate and make a sound. And potentially, that could end up in your recording and you really don't want that. So even more so important is when you're tracking vocals, making sure nothing resonates in the room. So I generally track vocals in the same room as my drum room because there's a lot of treatment in there, it's a lot more isolated and gets a cleaner vocal sound. but I also have my drum kit kind of permanently set up. So when it comes to vocal time, I always pull the cymbals off and I take the toms and I put them on the floor and I'll put something on top of the head so they don't resonate. And that makes sure that there's nothing in there that's gonna rumble. Now, if they have a music stand as well, some vocalists will request to have a music stand so they can put their lyrics on it. You probably need to put something over it to stop the metallic edge of that stand ringing. It's the same as this stool. If you have a music stand and you tap it, it resonates. You're probably gonna wanna put something like a tea towel over it or just something to muffle it so that when they sing and hit a big note, they don't get any resonance from it. You might be like, surely that can't be a problem, but once you start compressing vocals, it starts to bring up all this stuff that's in the room of it and can really start to become a problem. Okay, and I'm gonna bring the sock back for one more hack here. Now you can do this with a piece of foam or you can do it with a sock. I tried it the other day and it worked quite well with a sock. Say if you're going for that Hofner bass sound, you want it to be kind of muted and thumpy sounding. Getting a sock and putting it through the bridge actually works really well. I don't know if you can hear that. It sounds like you're palm muting it. It actually sounds really cool, gives you this dampened, muted bass sound. Otherwise you can just put a little piece of foam in there, but same deal, a sock kind of does the trick as well. So little hack if you're trying to get a different sound out of your bass guitar, give it a go. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure you turn on that notification bell so you can keep up to date with these videos. A couple of ways you can show your support. You can use the PayPal link below if you want to send a tip for just saying thanks for making this content, as well as if you want to follow the link in the description to my website, you can check out my drum samples and mixing courses, and that is a massive support to this channel. If you're keen to watch another video, check this one out next, where I'm going to run you through my favorite plugins that I use regularly when mixing.